Welcome back to the channel, everyone. My name is Alex, and you are on the Classic Cars Roast channel. Let me hit you with a car that seems to invoke either rabid love or deep-seated disgust. The 1971 Lincoln Mark III. This car is a hodgepodge of grandiose design and mediocre engineering, a true product of the Malaise era where American automotive ambition took a nosedive into the abyss. With its striking exterior and plush interior, it might look tempting at first glance, but remember, appearances can be deceiving, especially when that engine is packing a pathetic 190 horsepower SAE net. That's right, folks. A V8 that was once the pride of American muscle is now just a sad representation of what we lost after 1970, the last great year for high-compression engines. Now let's talk market conditions. The so-called big iron market is really heating up these days, and prices for these classic beasts are soaring. Auction results show well-maintained examples fetching anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000. However, if you think you can snag a good deal, you might be in for a rude awakening. The absurdity of it all? These cars are often sold with incredibly low mileage, like a Mark III with only 97 miles that went for $140,000. It's mind-boggling. And yet it all comes down to that brutal charm, that unapologetic character that resonates with collectors who remember a time when cars were made of heavy iron rather than flimsy plastic. First impressions of the Mark III are undeniably strong. The long hood and the iconic Lincoln Continental spare tire hump on the trunk scream luxury, but don't let the shiny chrome bumpers fool you. As you move inside, you're greeted with deep cushion leather upholstery and a dashboard that looks like it was designed for someone's grandpa's living room. Nice, but a bit outdated. And while you might find that automatic temperature control and Cartier clock appealing, you better brace yourself for the common electrical issues. Power windows that refuse to budge? Oh, just par for the course with these beauties. If you're thinking about diving into owning one of these, remember this: it's only original once. So if you find one that's been repainted or has shoddy build quality, just walk away. Trust me, the last thing you want is to pour money into a car that's been patched up like a bad quilt. The Lincoln Mark III may have its charm, but it also has more quirks than a vintage sitcom. So, what's your take on this classic? Would you take the plunge, or does the thought of owning this piece of automotive history give you the heebie-jeebies? Oh boy, where do I even start with the creation story of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III? First off, let's set the stage. This car was born right in the heart of the Malaise era, a time when American automakers were cranking out underwhelming machines that would make even the most die-hard gearhead cringe. The last great year for high-compression V8s was 1970, and what did we get with this so-called luxury beast? A laughable compression ratio of 7.6 to 1. Seriously, what were they thinking? This was a time when the industry was scrambling to meet stricter emissions regulations and fuel economy standards, and the result was just pathetic horsepower, about 190 horsepower SAE net. That's barely enough to get a decent lawnmower going, let alone a luxury coupe. Now the Mark III was part of the third generation of the Continental Mark series, and while it had the potential to be something special, the reality was far from it. You've got to admire its classic Lincoln Continental spare tire hump on the trunk and its unique upright grille that proudly displays the Continental emblem. But dive deeper, and you realize it's just a mask for the mediocrity underneath. The large chrome bumpers? Sure, they look good, but they do nothing to hide the dreadful build quality that has plagued these cars over the years. What's even more outrageous is the engineering choices made during its creation. The Lincoln Mark III was fitted with a 3-speed automatic transmission, the Ford C6, which, let's be honest, pales in comparison to the turbo-hydromatic 400, the best automatic transmission ever built. Why settle for second best when you could have had a powerhouse of a transmission? And don't even get me started on the interior. Sure, it had deep cushion leather upholstery and some fancy wood veneer trim, but the dashboard layout? Symmetrical? More like painfully bland. You've got a massive horizontal speedometer that's begging for attention but is overshadowed by the sheer mediocrity of the overall design. And those electrical problems? Power windows and seat motors that fail? It's almost like they set out to create a luxury car that would become a maintenance nightmare. So, there you have it. The creation story of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III is a perfect illustration of everything that went wrong in the Malaise era. It's a car that could have been a statement of luxury and power, but ended up being a sad reminder of a time when American automotive excellence was slipping away. Would you want to be caught driving this thing? I wouldn't. Look at this exterior. It's a masterclass in mediocrity, folks. The 1971 Lincoln Mark III, which is supposed to embody the pinnacle of American luxury, somehow manages to look like a design committee ran out of steam halfway through. Sure, it has the classic Lincoln Continental spare tire hump on the trunk, which is about as iconic as it gets, but the overall execution? Pretty dreadful. The body lines scream, "I'm trying too hard," while simultaneously whispering, "Please forget me." Now, the color palette includes some shades that seem to have been plucked straight from a dusty old paint store. You've got standard blacks, grays, and a few muted metallics like medium green and medium blue. Seriously, where's the pizzazz? How about a bold color that actually says, "Look at me," instead of "Please don't notice me"? And don't even get me started on the large chrome bumpers. They look like they were borrowed from a truck, bulky, clunky, and about as subtle as a sledgehammer to the face. Integrated parking and signal lamps? Sure, if you want to turn your car into a walking advertisement for overcompensating. Speaking of the grille, it's unique with that upright design and the centrally placed Continental emblem, but it feels more like a desperate attempt to catch the eye than an elegant statement. It's like they thought if they slapped a shiny badge on the front, no one would notice the overall design is uninspired at best. Now, let's talk about the quirks. Covered headlamps. What's that all about? Who thought hiding the headlights was a good idea? It's like covering your eyes and expecting the world to see you. The long hood is an attempt at grandeur, but it only emphasizes how bulky and unwieldy this car really is. And the build quality? Don't get me started. Those comically thick door seals are apparently there to hide poor panel gaps, which is a slap in the face to anyone who values craftsmanship. You might as well have just left the gaps visible. At least then we'd all know what we were in for. In conclusion, the exterior of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III is a mixed bag of half-hearted attempts at luxury and style. For me, a car that's supposed to represent the best of American engineering and design shouldn't feel like a compromise. If you're looking for a car that's going to turn heads for all the wrong reasons, then this is it. But if you want a classic that actually makes a statement, I'd keep looking. Now turn your attention to the interior of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III. This is where the car tries to make up for its lackluster performance. But does it succeed? Let's find out. Step inside, and you're greeted by the unmistakable scent of aged leather mixed with a hint of nostalgia. The deep cushion leather upholstery is supposed to wrap you in comfort, but it can feel more like a time capsule than a luxurious ride. Sure, it looks plush, but let's be honest. How many of these cars have survived the ravages of time without serious wear and tear? Too many of these interiors suffer from cracked leather and faded trim, which is a real shame because the design is undeniably elegant. The dashboard layout is symmetrical, adorned with wood veneer trim that screams, "Look at me," but often ends up looking a little tired. What's more, that large horizontal speedometer. It's easier to read than your ex's texts at 3 in the morning, but you'll find yourself wishing it had a bit more character. And don't you dare forget that optional wood trim finish on the steering wheel, if you can find one that isn't cracked or peeling. Comfort? Well, that depends. The seats are designed for leisurely cruising, but if you're planning to take this beast on a long road trip, you might want to bring a cushion. The central armrest with storage is a nice touch, but where's the console? This isn't a muscle car, and it shows. The lack of a traditional console feels like a missed opportunity to add some sporty flair to an otherwise sedate experience. And let's not overlook the options: automatic temperature control, power windows, and seats. Sure, they sound great, but what's the reality? Electrical issues plague many of these cars, especially with power windows and seat motors that can be about as reliable as a politician's promise. You might find yourself cranking those windows manually like it's 1965 all over again. In the end, the interior of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III is a mixed bag. It's luxurious without a doubt, but with age comes the inevitable decline. For me, the smell of old leather and the promise of comfort are easily overshadowed by the reality of electrical gremlins and worn-out materials. Would I buy one for the interior alone? Absolutely not. The charm is there, but it's a brutal charm that comes at a price I'm not willing to pay for something that might fall apart at any moment. Here we are, diving deep into the engine of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III, and let me tell you, this is where things go from bad to worse. First off, we're dealing with a massive 460 cubic inch V8 engine. Sounds impressive, right? But before you get too excited, let's talk about the real numbers. This is a classic example of the Malaise era, where power took a nosedive. The gross horsepower is approximately 365, but when you consider the net horsepower rating, which wasn't widely used until after 1972, this car is clearly stuck in a time warp. The pathetic net horsepower, if we had to quantify it, would likely be around 190. Yes, you heard me right, 190 horsepower from an engine this size. That's just embarrassing. Now, let's not forget the torque. Approximately 500 pound-feet, which might sound like a lot, but in reality, the power delivery is more of a gentle nudge than a kick in the back. It's as if Lincoln took a big, heavy engine and decided to put a chain on it. And while we're at it, let's talk about the compression ratio, 7.6 to 1. Seriously, even your grandma's old sedan could outcompress this beast. The days of high-compression V8s are long gone, and the Mark III is a sad reminder of that decline. The engine code for this monster is, fittingly, the 460 V8. And while it might seem like Lincoln was trying to keep things consistent, it's really just an excuse for not innovating. You could think they'd at least put some effort into making this engine something special, but nope. What we have here is an uninspired lump of iron that's more about cruising than performance. Now let's shift gears and talk about the transmission. The Lincoln Mark III comes equipped with a C6 3-speed automatic transmission, which is a solid choice, but it's not the turbo-hydromatic 400, the best automatic transmission ever built. If you're in the market for a classic car, you'll want to steer clear of anything with a C6. It's just not going to deliver the same level of performance. So, what's the takeaway here? If you're looking for power and performance, the 1971 Lincoln Mark III is not going to cut it. It's a classic example of how the automotive industry dropped the ball during the Malaise era, leaving us with a car that's more about luxury than any semblance of excitement. Would I buy this car? Not a chance. The engine is where the real problems begin, and I'm not about to waste my money on this glorified land yacht. All right, folks, it's time to dig into the guts of this beast, the transmission and rear axle. Because if there's one thing I can't stand, it's a car that doesn't deliver when it comes to shifting gears. The 1971 Lincoln Mark III comes with a 3-speed automatic transmission, and let me tell you, it's a Ford C6. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, what's wrong with that? Well, let me break it down for you. The Ford C6 might have had its moments, but it's no turbo-hydromatic 400. That's right, folks. The turbo-hydromatic 400 is the best automatic transmission ever built. It's like comparing a fine steak to a soggy piece of cardboard. The C6 can't even hold a candle to the raw power and reliability of a turbo-hydromatic. So, when you're behind the wheel of a Lincoln Mark III, remember that you're not getting the best of the best in the transmission department. Now, moving on to the rear axle, the standard ratio for this bad boy is 2.80 to 1. That's about as thrilling as watching paint dry. Sure, it gets the job done, but it's not exactly going to set your heart racing. In an era where performance was king, this rear axle ratio feels like a slap in the face. The car's acceleration from 0 to 60 miles per hour takes around 8.5 seconds, and while that's not terrible, it's hardly impressive. You want a car that can push you back in your seat, not one that makes you feel like you're riding a lazy river. And don't get me started on the potential issues that can arise. The Lincoln Mark III has a tendency for the timing chain to become noisy over time, which is just fantastic. Nothing says luxury like a noisy engine component. The rear axle is also not immune to its share of weaknesses. If you're not careful, you could find yourself dealing with vacuum leaks that affect the climate control system. Great for those hot summer days, right? So, considering the transmission and rear axle, it's clear that while this car has its charm, it doesn't quite live up to the expectations of a classic luxury vehicle. The mechanical components should inspire confidence, but instead, they leave you questioning if you should be spending your hard-earned cash on something that feels more like a compromise than a true classic. Would I buy this car? Not a chance. Now let's talk about suspension, brakes, and handling, the trifecta of automotive performance that the 1971 Lincoln Mark III utterly flunks. Seriously, if you thought the exterior was a spectacle, wait until you feel the ride. The Mark III was built with a heavy focus on comfort, but did they nail it? Not even close. The suspension setup is a classic example of why the Malaise era gets such a bad rap. With a front independent suspension and a rear leaf spring setup, it sounds decent on paper, but the execution is where the wheels fall off, literally and figuratively. The ride can best be described as floaty, and not in a good way. You'd expect some luxury, but instead you get wallowing that feels like you're gliding on a cloud made of marshmallows. Now, about the brakes. If you think a car that weighs in heavy should have confident stopping power, you'd be dead wrong with this one. The Mark III came with power disc brakes up front and drums at the rear. Sounds good, right? Wrong. The stopping power is about as reassuring as a tightrope walker on a windy day. You push down on that pedal and it feels like you're trying to stop a freight train with a rubber band. The brake fade is real and it's embarrassing for a car that's supposed to exude luxury. Now, handling? Ha! You're better off trying to steer a barge. The rear leaf spring setup just doesn't cut it for spirited driving. You'd think a car with this much weight would feel planted, but it bounces around like a giddy teenager on a sugar high. Go ahead, take a corner, and you'll find the body roll is beyond comical. It's downright tragic. For me, a car that can't handle well is an immediate disqualifier. I want a vehicle that feels connected to the road, not one that floats like a hot air balloon. It's like they took the handling of a classic muscle car, tossed it out the window, and replaced it with something that feels like a lazy Sunday drive through Malaise. So, if you're expecting the Lincoln Mark III to deliver a driving experience that matches its imposing presence, prepare for disappointment. The handling is a slap in the face to anyone who appreciates the art of driving. Would I buy this car? Absolutely not. Not when the handling feels like a bad joke. When it comes to the reliability of the 1971 Lincoln Mark III, the truth is a harsh one. This car is notorious for its common rust spots, especially around the lower doors, rear quarter panels, and trunk lid edges. You can almost guarantee that if you see one of these beauties on the road, it's hiding some serious corrosion under that flashy exterior. And if that's not enough, let's talk about electrical issues. The power windows and seat motors, they're about as dependable as a politician's promise. Expect to be wrestling with those more than once in your ownership. Now, while we're at it, don't forget about the mechanical weak points. The timing chain tends to get noisy over time, and don't be surprised if you start encountering vacuum leaks that wreak havoc on that supposedly luxurious climate control system. This isn't exactly the picture of reliability you'd want from a classic car, is it? For me, if a car is going to have the audacity to flaunt itself as a classic American luxury vehicle, it better deliver in the reliability department. So, where does that leave us? If we take a step back and look at the big picture, the 1971 Lincoln Mark III has its charms. It's a piece of history, a relic from a time when American cars were built like tanks. The presence, the sheer size, and the luxurious interior do have a certain brutal charm that can't be denied. But the reality is owning one of these beasts is a gamble. You're not just buying a car, you're buying a project that could drain your wallet faster than you can say big iron. Despite all its flaws, if you find one in good condition for a good price, buy it. Just remember, you'll need a good mechanic on speed dial and a strong stomach for the inevitable surprises that come with it. Would I spend my money on this? That's a hard no unless I could find one that's absolutely rust-free and with a rock-solid history. At the end of the day, the Lincoln Mark III remains an emblem of a bygone era, but you better know what you're getting into before you take the plunge. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give it a like. Leave your comments and impressions. Your opinion is very important to me. Until next time.